Hey guys, welcome to this first episode of what we'd like to call Packet Party Podcast Out of Band. We had a couple of technical difficulties when first recording this, trying a new platform, so we've had to stitch together two videos, but I'll send you off into the main event now. Cheers. Oh, we're doing it again, and we are back.
We're back.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, well, we managed to capture the first part anyway, so let's just cut them together. Anyway,
Gotta love the
so Vlad,
podcasting
what
world.
what what the hell are we up to today?
So today, you and I were going to talk about kind of what we've been doing lately in our own personal lives in the labs, just for something different, right? Something that's a little bit not like tech news discussion heavy, something a little fun. Although I imagine when we bring up the word AI, then that's going to start getting some eye rolls. So, how about I show you a little bit of what I've been doing first, and then we can kind of go from there in terms of conversation. Good?
There you go. Sure. Go ahead.
Sweet. Let me share my screen here. The magic of the internet's here. Okay, and
So
of course,
while Vlad's doing that, look at that. You can see the background. So Vlad has been up to some really exciting stuff. A lot of it was AI assisted. Don't judge us.
that's exactly what the conversation was going to be about today. So, I mean, I have been at our employer, as you can see here, Cisco. We've got our own lovely little AI tool. It's no real secret anymore, and we can use it with all sorts of models. So, I've been jamming lately with Claude Sonnet, and to be perfectly honest, I could have probably done half of the stuff that it had me like it did for me, but it probably would have taken me significantly longer to piece it all together
Yep.
by
Yep.
writing the
Yep.
code by hand. So I will say that for me in this instance, the AI has acted as a tool, and I'm going to kind of highlight some of the dumb bits that it did later on throughout the thing. But first, let me walk you through using this imagery of what I've actually done in my own life. So I've got obviously the internet, and there I've got what's called Cloudflare Edge, and I've got a couple of domains here which I'll bring up afterwards, which are hosting websites on a little Intel nook that's downstairs in my house. I've got my Meraki network, so 67C. Thank you, Fred, for that one.
My pleasure.
9200 and some very 8-year-old Meraki access points in dire need of an upgrade.
Which is just a testament to, you don't have to have the latest and the greatest. It can still work as long as it's fairly compliant to existing standards.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't give me all of the nice new smarts that a newer AP would have, given all the other intelligence, but we're not here to sell that right now. Let's just say that's on the radar to buy very soon. Um, so from there, I've got my Intel NUC, and on there, what I've done is I've used Ansible and Terraform to give me basically a Kubernetes cluster, a Splunk instance, and then from there, provision a whole bunch of different containers on there. So what I've done is I've used the open source version of Cilium and Tetragon, which used to be Isovalent, which Cisco bought and is turning into Hypershield slowly but surely. I've got that installed.
So, Vlad,
And
before we go any further,
yes,
care to kind of break down, because it's probably a fairly new concept to people, what tetragon and psyllium might be. The only
cool.
psyllium that I know is spelled differently, and I know it's digestive fiber. So uh, maybe we can kind of break that down for them, at least on its basis concept and what it does.
Yeah. So the basic concept is that at the kernel level, we are controlling intercontainer networking with Cilium, and with Tetragon, we are applying policies that will allow containers and the underlying operating system, which in my case is Ubuntu, to do or not be able to do certain things. So, for example, if I want to lock down, like, say I have a container that's actually got access to the actual disk to save off information,
Mhm.
right? I want to be able to lock it down such that even if someone happens to do something dodgy to my web app and then gain root access inside of the container, they can't then drop some sort of and run a script that then allows them to do some sort of like escalation privilege via my storage into the root operating system, right? So that's where Tetragon works well.
Yep.
And then Cilium obviously allows you to apply policies that says some containers can't talk to each other and so on, and actually enforce that at like the kernel level versus the operating system level, which is a lot faster, smoother, quicker, better in so
Yep.
many
Yep.
ways.
So to further build on that, I'll make it a little more layman, or at least as it was explained to me. I always like telling people, explain it to me as if I were not a 5-year-old. 5-year-old people, 5-year-old kids. My 5-year-old kid will not understand a bit about this stuff, but let's
You're like,
pretend maybe explain it to me like I'm 10. So the way it was explained to me was Tetragon or Hypershield, as we call it now, runs on the kernel level, which is just below the operating system, closer to the hardware. And to our engineering folks here, or technical folks, you know how when we talk about the OSI layer, you've got layer 1 to layer 7, and the layer 1 would be where the bits and bytes happen. And just after that bits and bytes level, where the Ethernet thing happens, is where kind of it plays. So imagine having a firewall that operates at the Ethernet level, rather than how we know firewalls right now that operate on the layer 4 level
yep.
and up. Is that kind of a fair representation of that technology?
Yeah, it's a fair representation. I mean, there's a lot of big differences versus running an operating system firewall where, it's significantly faster to deal with the packet at that lower level versus having the operating system process it once via another application like IP tables, for example, because from there
Mhm.
you're going above the kernel into the OS, then processing the packet, applying some policy. You're doing all of that before it gets even there. So you're actually saving resources on the device. It's a lot more less cost intensive, I should say,
Yep.
on the actual underlying service. So very good stuff.
Think like firewall operating on safe mode, right?
Now, what else am I doing? So Cloudflare offers Let's Encrypt via its DNS and zone management, which all comes all part of the free tier, amazingly. So I know Cloudflare sometimes is very competitive to our current employer, Cisco, but in some cases, it's very handy if you've got a
And
domain
you
and you
mentioned
want
there
to
was
just.
like some automation workflow that happens here as well, right?
Yeah, I'll open up VS Code later and I can show you a little bit of how all of that works.
That was really exciting
Um,
when I heard about it.
And there's a Cloudflare tunnel. So basically, from the Cloudflare service, it comes down and pipes in. From there, I've got an Nginx instance, which is acting as like a load balancer. And from there, depending on the domain you hit, it goes to a different container. And I've got at least 3 containers that I've got running here. And one of them, what I've done is just a basic Flask web app, which allows you to do some sort of Cisco Duo auth. I'll show you through that later. And of course, I'm logging all of this into Splunk. I've got a bunch of network policies, which is enforced by Cilium, which we mentioned earlier, Splunk, and then dashboards there. So all really cool stuff. Now, I realize I've not opened VS Code yet, which probably should have. So what I am doing with VS Code is I fire SSH here, I'm running all of this. So you can see there's like 1,000,001 files here, right? Crazy amount. So if I would have made all of this by myself, it would have taken forever.
I'm sure.
So yeah, thank the Lords for AI being able to cut out the middleman for me.
And if it'll take you forever, that'll take me forever and a day to finish, man.
So where are we? We've got our base playbooks here, and I think anyone who's seen Ansible before kind of understands what we're doing here. So there's the base system setup, we're enabling certain services. There's a lot of things that you have to do to get Cilium and Tetragon working as well. So making sure that certain operating system features are turned on.
What are
so on and so forth. And
you
this
know, one
actually,
of the probably to get people excited about what we're doing here, um, one of the probably the more tangible results of this work that you've been doing, Vlad, is that you actually hosted our packetparty.net website out of this
correct,
project. So
correct.
there you go. Cat's out of the bag, everyone. Packetparty.net. It's a very basic site. It just links you to our podcast and to Spotify, to Apple, and probably a few others like our YouTube channel, which where this video is going.
I'm
But
going to
if
bring that up in
anyone,
just a minute. So
it's public facing through some kind of Cloudflare tunnel. So if anybody starts to, if you even get any ideas to start an attack, we're gonna we're gonna hunt you down wherever you might be. Okay, big words, but I don't know how we're gonna do that.
it's okay. I'll bring up my Splunk dashboard in a minute. I'll show you guys what's going on. And conversely, there's Terraform, right? So Terraform allows me to specify all of this sort of stuff that you're going to pass into the container. And then that allows you to do all sorts of things. So like the Nginx one here, which container is it forwarding what to? That's all configured in here as well, which is
Yep,
absolutely wild. So I'll
which
eventually
is
publish all of this
it's
publicly on my
absolutely
GitHub.
crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, this is like top tier level like automation, which some of the big guys are doing. And what's cool is that I've been able to do all of that just in my own home. Um, then when you layer on all of this, right? So here are the aforementioned websites. They are AI designed. I'm going to get around to doing it myself later, but this all goes via a Cloudflare tunnel onto a said container in my environment. Um, Same for Packet Party here as well. We're going to redo this eventually, but
Yep,
um, it works, right? And look, click Apple Podcasts. It's going to actually open Apple Podcasts on my local PC here. Boom.
there you go.
Um, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, there is this little Duo app. And why I did this is that, like, like you can show how I can log into certain applications, right? But it's nice to be able to actually set up something that allows you to log in. And so the reason why I did that is what I'm going to show you now on the Splunk dashboard. So I used a whole bunch of AI support to pull all of this together. But how this all kind of works on the back end is that Splunk's got all of these pre-configured applications, and one is actually called the Cisco Security Cloud application. And from here, with each of our different applications via APIs, you can then start to pull data from Duo. And the reason why I'm talking over this at the moment is that right now, the Cisco Duo one, for example, is configured to go and pull it every 120 seconds. That's sort of just like the base timeline that you're looking at. So that's how that looks like. So then we might not have caught it there. Let's see. Okay, we still haven't caught it there. It'll come in. Oh no, here we go. So adaptive trust assessment. So look, we've just logged in. Oh, this was yesterday's. That's okay. Still, it showcases what I wanted to show you, which is look, normal level of trust, no detection of known attack pattern, known access IP. So I've logged into this application from this IP before. My location, my city, all of this sort of stuff. And because the computer I'm using actually has AMP installed and the Duo Health app is able to just automatically pull all of that from my device as well, which is pretty wild. And it's all in this beautiful little dashboard. Could this be
And this is something
the
that already you just put the widgets together in Splunk Splunk dashboard, right? People don't necessarily have to build up another web service just to get that going.
So there are some pre-configured dashboards. What I did is I just asked the AI from earlier to give me the XML files, and
Ooh.
that's exactly what it does. Is it generates all of the XML for you? Which, hang on, I'll bring it up in VS Code. That's a little quicker. Um, and everything's just XML.
Oh, it's copy paste.
Exactly. So you set your search query of the thing you want to show. You set the design of it, and it runs all those searches and displays everything on the dashboard for you. So
Very
it's
nice.
relatively straightforward. Um,
So if there's anyone out there who knows a little more than we do about how to build this dashboard and you think you can do better, please teach us. Please, please, please teach us.
Now, what else are we looking at here? So I've got my little IoT set up. You can see soil moisture good. So my
Oh, I
little
love this. I love this story. Vlad, you wanna tell us about what kind of drove you to start this project and how it's going right now?
yeah. So look, I wanted to learn a little bit more around just plants, farming, all of this sort of stuff. I also wanted to combine that with IoT gadgetry, so I bought a whole bunch of Arduino um, Shao ESP32C3 controllers and all of this. And I've been just, again, utilizing AI to help me because I know Python, but I don't know C or C++. So I was getting that to help me sort of build the code, fixing things. And what I do is I send from these controllers over the Wi-Fi about every 15 minutes. It pulls some data from a sensor, flings that across the network into Splunk, and then I just dashboard it up like this. Now, one of the bad things about running it on a little Intel NUC is that sometimes, there we go, it gets jammed up on being able to run all my queries because it's busy doing so many other things. But what I've been learning is that, like how much like temperature, for example, soil moisture, pH, all of these things affects the soil and the plant, and I get to see all of
Yeah.
that in data, right? Which is wild. And then I get
And
alerts
you've
as
actually
well.
posted this in your LinkedIn page, right? Like, I
Correct.
saw the photo where the sensor is actually plugged in. I don't know if I understood that correctly. The sensor was kind of, uh, you just poked that into the soil and just let it do its thing. What I'm really excited about is when the strawberry plants, you were planting strawberries, right?
Yep.
I cannot wait for the day when those strawberries come out.
My kids have been picking them every morning, two or three of them, and eating them every day. So I've
Ooh,
not yet started to
fun.
taste ones. But it's wild, right? Like I thought the plants were having a little bit of trouble recently because it's starting to get into summer here in Japan. And I mean, lo and behold, right, I was able to tell that actually, yeah, the soil was dry.
So you just
So,
had to add a little more water than usual.
exactly. And I can still see that my pH, even though it says the ideal minimum is 6, it's actually a little bit lower for strawberries. So I'm really at my ideal soil pH here, which is great. So it means that they
Nice.
can grab tons of juiciness from the soil here. So really cool stuff. What else have we got here? Meraki syslogs are sending a ton of stuff from my MX and MRs, so I can see associations, disassociations, authentications. I can see security events, which is really cool. I can see, yeah, when has roaming, etc., occurred, and obviously I can. If you know anything about what you're doing here, I can sort of deep dive down in here and go even further. And then you can start to see that certain things happen. So, I was trying to request access to the application and it kind of flagged that as like a, is that okay? Sort of um, thing happening there. So, yeah, very cool stuff.
What will be
Again,
interesting is, when you actually come around to, I don't know if you've already integrated our XDR solution into your dashboard, and if you're able to pull more data out of what we can see from dashboard into Splunk, that would be a really cool use case.
that's my next port of call. So I'm going to work with the Splunk guys, hopefully, to see how I can ingest security feeds, map that with the syslog data that I have, and potentially NetFlow, which I want to try and start pulling in as well, because that gets you a little bit different data versus syslog, right? So I do want to compare the both and see what's better and how I can marry that with some sort of security feed data as well. Um, Mind you, you can see a lot of this with inside of the Meraki dashboard, right? But sometimes you want a slightly different sort of representation of the exact same data, right? And so that's what Splunk really allows you to do. And I'm doing all of this on a dev license. Actually, I'm doing this all on the free tier. I had to rebuild this environment, and I haven't put the license back in here again yet. So I got to remember to do that. But I'm not tripping any licensing here, right? Like on my
Well,
daily licensing, doing it.
half the
So
fun is
it's,
finding out how much you can get away with a free tier, right?
I mean, yeah, yeah, pretty much.
It's exactly like what I've been trying to do with, you remember this when I was preparing for that Cisco Live talk last year.
Yes.
Most of what I've done there is on the free tier of Entra for reasons, or the only reason that I don't want to spend a single dollar in Entra, which is probably not a good thing to say, but isn't kind of the whole
The,
point of being an SE? Try to get away with as much as you can with free stuff.
it, hacking, right? It's all about hacking. Um, so the last one here, the last dashboard that I made, and this one's probably the best one, is the what I call my Kubernetes Security Operations Lab. So this is taking all of the Cilium and Tetragon logs and pulling all of that into Splunk for me. And what's really interesting is that you can see how it peaks and drops at different times of day. And in most cases, like, everyone's accessing my page fine. There are certain error codes and things coming out. I
Have
can
you
see what's
have you been
generating noise.
finding some interesting attempts into your portal though?
I was gonna say the one thing that I'm really glad is that I'm not running WordPress.
Okay.
'Cause check this out, top scan URI. So people are trying to scan my domains actively to find very specific files that they can attempt to try and basically brute force attacks. This is all automated attacks on WordPress. Um, Logins, WordPress includes like well-known sort of files that you can try to hit over the internet that people don't lock down properly on WordPress environments. And that allows you sort of like instant access into the back end of that website, which is really not good, right? So you can see that people are just automatically scanning these domains across the internet all day, every day, which is kind of enlightening for me because you kind of don't think about this when you don't host your own website, right? But when you start doing that, you realize, like, crap, there's a lot of stuff just going on out there. And I imagine with what we've seen lately with like automated attacks using, AI agents, for example,
Mhm.
imagine dropping
Oh, now would be
overflow.
a good time to talk about that whole thing. I think it's already public information anyway, but we might as well try and, capture that moment and explain to everyone what's going on. Why is there why is there a huge fuss right now about, cybersecurity? The keywords that we're talking about are Claude's Anthropic's Mythos model,
Yes.
the Project Glasswing, and why it came about. I actually got a front seat, uh, no, not a front seat into the actual attack, but a front seat to how that was explained. A master class in how that was explained by none other than Carl Solder himself. I was there in a meeting with one of my customers, and we were talking about that. So Vlad, I know it's a bit of a segue to what we were supposed to do, but I think now is a good time than any to cover this whole thing.
Yeah, let's get right into it. It's been crazy, right? Because I mean, what we're doing with what Anthropic is doing with Mythos and now GPT with what was it, GPT 5.5 Codex, is that they've become smarter than ever at analyzing your source code to find basically what would be very rudimentary attacks amongst tens of hundreds of thousands of lines of code that you might have in an application.
Mhm.
So rather than waiting to be attacked, finding out where in the code that could be attacked, right? You have this thing that's automatically scanning tens of hundreds of thousands of lines for you and going, you could probably be a buffer overflow here and then that there and this there, right? So that's fantastic, right? And we've already seen, what was it, the news the other day, if I bring that up, was um,
So how it was
Mozilla.
how it was described to me was there were vulnerabilities that had existed 15, 20 years ago that was never found. But this model, so smart that it is, it's so smart that it's able to pick up these vulnerabilities. And on its own, these vulnerabilities might not be able to do much. But as you said, that model was clever enough to stitch these vulnerabilities that are independently probably not so useful by themselves, but stitch them together to actually make it an actionable exploit.
Correct. Correct. Um, so you can see one of the first things that's come out immediately from that is Firefox has already released fixes for 271 vulnerabilities
Yes.
identified during the initial evaluation.
Yes. So Mythos is
That's
the large language model that is supposed to be smarter than what was the smartest one that they have right now with in Anthropic? Was it Opus?
Claude Code.
Yeah, Claude. There's like different levels to that, right? See, you can see
Yeah,
how
I can't remember
how
the exact
stupid
name
we
now.
are when it comes to these. But there's the Sonnet, there's the Opus, and then I think Mythos was supposed to sit higher than that.
Yes, correct. You're right. Yes. Yeah, that rings a bell.
Yeah.
So
And so
yeah,
now I
it's
think what Anthropic did was instead of when they realized that this is something that they shouldn't be releasing publicly just yet, they decided to um, get about I think initially there were 12 companies, 12 of the biggest names in the industry, Cisco included,
yeah,
as kind of the initial group that they collectively called Project Glasswing, or I could have described that differently. So, Project Glasswing was the result of what Anthropic found because of Mythos, and now they created that consortium that consisted of that first initially those 12 companies, some of the biggest names. This is all public info. We're just kind of describing as we know it. And then
yeah,
Mozilla, I think, was one of them as well, part of that initial 12. And then there's about 40 more or something more, 40 more, I think, that is extended. And they were given like a sandbox instance of Mythos, and Anthropic offered that sandbox to these companies, advised them to run their code against this model and uncover any existing vulnerabilities that they might not have known about and get ahead of potential exploits that way. So I think that's kind
yeah,
of the whole idea. Now, what's really concerning about this is maybe over a decade ago, day zero, the day zero vulnerabilities as they were discovered on average took about a year before people are able to produce an exploit. And over the
yeah.
years, that exploit has that time to exploit has reduced to before Mythos, I think was about 3 months to exploit. And now they realize that Mythos is able to create an exploit in as little as 20 hours. So that time to exploit has reduced to less than 24 hours. That means from the time that vulnerability gets announced, you have less than 24 hours to react to it and defend yourself. So that's the state
And
of things right now.
so I've been listening to a lot of podcasts from these guys lately, where oops, bring that up on the stage, and it goes through a lot of the stuff that's going on with AI lately. And this guy James, he talks with Brad Arkin, who used to be, our CISO at Cisco for a while, and some of the cool conversations they had, man. But one of the things that they said in one of the most recent episodes was around the fact that not only have we reduced the time to find 0 days, we can reduce the time to actually create said attacks. What they're also finding is that as soon as a patch is released, you can then utilize AI to essentially reverse engineer the patch and figure out what it's actually doing
Ooh.
so you can find where the vulnerability is.
Okay.
Um,
So you don't have to know what the vulnerability is, you just have to find the patch and reverse engineer it from there. Oh,
Basically, yes. And then that allows you to know what exactly they're patching, how they're patching it, and then you know exactly what the vulnerability is, and then build an exploit for that as well. So what hear a lot of people predicting is that we're going to spend a lot of time patching in the near future,
yes.
more or less. I mean, the theory goes that we're going to find a crap ton of 0 days for, like, say, the next 6 months to a year as models become smarter. And then I mean, theoretically speaking, we should probably hit a plateau at some point.
Some point, yep.
You would think so. Obviously, it's not guaranteed, though. I'm happy to be proven wrong. Everyone's got a different opinion on this. And then from there, it would be like a slow creep, right? Um, but then, given how much junk a lot of older AI models put out, that
You never
is
know.
really, but
You never know,
it,
right? It's
it's going to be
interesting.
a cat and mouse game. Yeah, it's going to
Yeah.
be crazy. But
I
the
mean, if
fact
you
that,
think
like I
about it,
mentioned,
companies are gonna keep writing code. They're gonna keep spitting out applications and features and enhancements and all that stuff. It's never gonna
that's right.
stop because that's where the business is.
Yeah,
It's whether how quickly they can catch their own mistakes. I mean, I think we know for a fact that as long as you're writing code, bugs are inevitable and vulnerabilities are inevitable. It's not like we intentionally put it
yeah,
there. It's just gonna happen. It's just how quickly we can catch those, and now with the help of AI, it's gonna happen much quicker than we were used to.
correct. And one of the things these guys keep talking about is they say that basically now we have to go back to basics. When we spoke about actual zero trust, now is the time that we actually have to do it properly because the
Yes.
deck is stacked against us, right? If you're using AI to defend yourself in a firewall, that's all well and great, but you're defending based on known attacks, essentially. Whereas the attackers, like, you can turn the temperature up on an AI model and it can spam 1,000 things. And even if 99% of it is absolute, and then the rest 1% gets you into the environment, that's still, you've been hacked, right? And so
Yes.
the deck is stacked in the favor of those who use AI to attack versus those who can defend, right? So
Correct.
then this is where, and it comes back to what we were doing earlier with, like, Tetragon, for example, and Cilium, right? It's actually applying policy between applications, sandboxing, doing all of these important things, zero trust access, making sure that things that shouldn't need to talk to each other cannot talk to each other,
Cannot
right? To
talk to each other,
limit
correct.
scope, right? Um, and that's where I think a lot of people who have snowflake networks are going to struggle moving to
Correct.
that sort of architecture of, like, a fabric that actually then goes and, say, blockades everything and does zero trust properly, right? So I think we're in for a little bit of pain in the short term, but hopefully there's long-term games to be built from all of this as well.
You're right.
Now we're
It's
trying.
interesting you bring that up in that manner because I found as, it quickly came to me, I found that one of the quickest responses that anyone with a network can do is,
Mm,
again, we've been preaching about this. We've learned it from the Talos guys, patching, patching, patching. Now more than ever, you really have to take your patching seriously and you have to kind of shorten that patching cycle. But something closer to our nature as network engineers, in that you have most of our customers would already have access to solutions that are existing. Take stock of what you have. Segmentation now becomes a very important strategy to apply
yeah,
into your network because it's probably the easiest and the low cost option that you do have is to strengthen your own house, introduce segmentation. And I've heard this over the past week twice or three times now. 70%. Now I'm going to massage that figure a bit. 70% is the actual number, but I'd say three out of every four attacks are actually lateral movements. So
Yeah.
if you're able to limit the exposure of that lateral movement of that attack, there's you limit the blast zone, so to speak, and you minimize the damage to your network. And guess what? Segmentation is all it takes. You just have to really sit down, review your network. Now's a good time to take that network topology to heart and really understand what the hell that legacy server is doing in your network, and
Yep.
really evaluate and start putting those strategies in place. You don't have to buy the latest and the greatest. Just solidify your fundamentals, and then you start building on that.
Yep. I think, what we were doing with access lists a long time ago was great in concept, but it became unmanageable very quickly the more
Correct.
people spanned out, right? And it takes me back to a conversation I had with a customer, which was like, I have a firewall at the perimeter of my branch network, but I don't know anything that's happening between that and my clients on the edge in the wireless. And what's happening east west, I don't see that. How do I police and blockade that? If I'm on a layer 2 segment on a switch, these clients can talk to each other directly, right? Boom, 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 boom. It's all switched locally through that switch. Obviously, depending on how your network segmentation is done, of course. But maybe you can't necessarily move layer 3 to the edge, but then that's where you get fabrics, downloadable ACLs. You're making sure that these endpoints can't talk to other endpoints, because in this day and age, there's no need for me to be SMBing a file locally
Correct.
from one computer to the next, right? That's
Absolutely.
what Yeah, I mean, that's what email, OneDrive, all of these other services that, I mean, most people are already leveraging anyway, right? But
Correct.
even though we've moved to those files, we haven't then gone back and locked down those existing Google network access
It's just
protocols
you're right.
there.
It's just, I guess, if we were to say it out loud, it's to be more conscious and be more deliberate about how you manage, operate, and configure your network. And where we're going with this, actually, one thing that sticks to my mind is that we've already introduced for a long time the framework of TrustSec. I think TrustSec is the industry term for it, right?
Mm,
And
more or less, yeah.
our approach to it is SGTs. So now these tags are packet level tags that get inserted into your payload or your entire packet party, and that tag gets placed in there, and you can enforce certain policies depending on that tag. So look, I know at first it could be daunting because you then have to start listing down everything that there is existing in your network. And then you have to align your business strategy and your business goals, then actually make something of it. And that's probably the heavy lifting, so to speak, that is involved in this whole exercise. But I reckon that's probably the least cost approach. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I mean, long term, it is the least cost approach. It's going to be the easiest to manage, and you'll be able to use AI to leverage that. I think where a lot of businesses are going to struggle is the migration from the legacy network into a fabricated network, right?
Correct.
Which is templated and all of this. Like for companies that already have a very templated network, it's a fairly easy transition, right?
That's right.
Because you've got the same access lists everywhere, the same VLANs, the same type of subnets structured in a beautiful way. But if your network's a lot more haphazard than that, then it can become significantly more difficult.
Correct.
Um,
And yeah, I guess
so
you're right. It brings up it then kind of introduces the, should I call that risk? But not really risk. But if you're some kind of business, it doesn't matter where you sit in that segment stack. Like I know we segment our business into small, medium, enterprise. You don't have to be the biggest and the baddest enterprise company that out there that can afford all these really nice and shiny toys. But if you're some kind of business that's able to purchase some level of enterprise grade networking. You're not What I mean by that is as long as you're not buying consumer grade stuff. And surprisingly enough, some of the consumer grade stuff have very impressive, for that level, a very
Mm.
impressive suite of security features. What
Oh
I'm
yeah.
saying is if you're buying something that's not quite consumer grade and sits a level above that, there's a very likely chance that you can turn on some enterprise grade features, security features, and you don't have to spend a lot of money. But the
Yeah.
bottom of it is you still really have to spend the money. And the way security was described to me before, I was taught this concept. Think of security as insurance. You don't okay, think of it as insurance in that when something happens, you'd be glad that it's there.
Yeah.
But if you don't, you'll realize the error of your ways.
And this is a tough cost trade-off where like I could pay the money to be secured and never get hacked, and then I go, well, crap, I spent all of that money and I didn't need it in the first place, right? Or you could not spend the money, you could unfortunately get hacked and then have to pay through the nose for that service and also pay through the nose to fix all of the problems that you've encountered as well, right?
And
I
the
think
battle
one of
scars
the
that come with it.
exactly. And so one of the things that one of the big attitude shifts I'm actually seeing talking with a lot of customers at the moment lately as well is that the fact that there is automated, like, okay, we've had script kiddies in the past, right? And like you
Yep,
can spin up Kali Linux and just throw scripts for a Metasploit at, a website or a customer, boom, 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 like it does its thing, right? Then you've got red teamers, and all of these
yep,
people who can pay to come and pen test your network and hack you, right? Um, and in a lot of cases, like hackers on the internet were only attacking big fish targets that are actually worthy of their time. And then came along ransomware, which is a little bit less discriminate. And now you've got into agentic AI, which is like just
doesn't care.
I'm
It just
I'm
sprays
gonna
the whole
go.
thing.
You give
What
it a
what
target and off it goes. And
what was that
it
term
doesn't
what was their term on that before? They call it spray and pray, I think.
spray and pray.
Right now with agentic AI, you don't even need to pray, you know they're gonna execute.
Oh mate. There's again, this is a video just from the guys that I brought up earlier as well. But there is one guy that has apparently actually made an automated AI system. So I'll drop a link in the comments of our video that links to it. He's going to drop it at Black Hat US in July. And he's actually going to open source all of this code as well. And then when that drops, can you imagine now suddenly everyone can spin up an AI agent, local laptop or their Mac Mini at home and just start throwing on the internet, right?
Yep, yep,
Just
yep.
insanity.
And
So
I suddenly remembered, you know how it used to be that, these malicious attacks and cybersecurity breaches and these hacking, so to speak, was performed by a select few who had the brain for it,
yeah,
or two who had the resources to afford the brains to do the attacks for them. And nowadays, there's a new business model, and I realize this is very much I don't it doesn't seem far-fetched now that we're talking about it, but they can actually outsource this knowledge base of attacks and offer it as a service, like attack
yep,
as a service. And it actually
yep,
does exist. I haven't seen it for myself, but I wouldn't be surprised that they could actually outsource this.
yeah. I mean, okay, it's not going to be as good as a real pen tester, I'm sure. Um, but you know, what if you pair a real pen tester with this automated tool? Things suddenly get considerably faster for that guy to run a pen test on you and actually do a lot of things against you, right?
That's right.
So here we go. There's already there's already articles out there on a bunch of places that already
Think you might have
exist.
to
Let me
update the stage.
give me one tick. I'm just going to share my screen here again and show this with everyone. So um, let's close this GoDaddy ad, add it to the stage. Boom. I mean, this was just from earlier this year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So like Trail of Bits, I've heard of. Calypso AI, I've heard of. I mean, and this is AI security for apps and agents, but there's a lot of these guys also do the reverse as well. So where they'll actually test for vulnerabilities in Gen AI and agents, but then there are companies as well that are actually utilizing AI to do penetration testing as well. So it's just mind blowing. Um, Things are accelerating at a crazy pace, and I'm like, this is exactly why I'm running my strawberry farm. One day, if I'm out of a job, at least I've got that to rely on, right? People always need food.
Yep.
Maybe you don't need a sales engineer in the future, but you definitely need food, right? So I'll be
You
there
need
for that.
food. We're still gonna need farmers at some point. What's to say you can't use the knowledge that you have in tech to grow your own strawberry farm? I don't mind living on strawberry for the rest of my days if that's what it comes to.
Oh
But man,
man, that's where the world is.
I never imagined in my life. You know, I've learned this philosophical line before, like ages ago. They say that if you want to be diplomatic about cursing someone, the line you tell them is "You may you live in interesting times." Have you heard that? Have you come across that before?
Not come across that as a curse such, so tell me more.
Like it was presented like if you tell someone, "May you live in interesting times." I don't remember who spoke that line out, but imagine this: the most interesting events in history are the ones where people tend to have gone through a great deal of suffering and pain.
Hmm.
So when you tell someone, "May you live in interesting times," you're cursing them to actually go through these painful moments in time.
Fair
And
enough.
now
May
this
you live
is
in happiness. May you live in peace. No, may you live in
because
interesting times. Yeah.
history never writes down in detail the boring, peaceful times. They only say
Yeah.
over the next 50, 100 so years, people lived in peace. But that's just like one line in a whole page. But the interesting times, they tend to be described in detail, what events transpired, what led to it, what happened after. So the curse is, may you live in interesting times. And one variation of that line is in one of my favorite movies, 300. Remember when I forget his name, the deformed guy gave away the position of the Spartans, and Leonidas, instead of getting like livid with him, he just told him, "May you live forever." Like
Mate, you
on the surface, it's almost like he's wishing him well that may you live forever. But you know for a fact, if you think further, anyone who lives forever will come to a point where they start to become miserable,
oh yeah, I mean, suffering after suffering,
right?
it can't be fun
So
in games the entire time. So
couple of minutes of philosophy there. So if you say the only thing that makes life good is because of is because it's finite. The happiness, the suffering, the misery, you know it will end at some point. But taking that away, you're actually cursing someone to go through that perpetual cycle of misery. So the
we'll
whole
go away.
right? So the whole reason why I brought that up is because I never expected in my life to actually mean this. We are living in very interesting times right now.
Yeah, tell my anxiety that, right? Um, Jeepers. Fred, do you want to show us what you're doing, mate? I mean, how long are we? We're at 49 minutes recording. To be honest, I cannot be bothered splitting this apart. We can drop this as one large episode for
I
everyone.
don't well,
How are you
what
feeling,
I've been
mate?
doing is nowhere near as exciting as what you're doing, but it's still pretty useful in my own scenario. But, like, look, I think I was born without any competitive spirit at all, so I don't really mind that we're not running at the same pace.
Okay, we'll make that episode 2 on what Fred's doing, and that'll give you a couple more days just to churn something out.
Was I got this I got a video for that one. Hold on, watch out, watch this.
Hey, hey,
Oh, it's not showing. Oh, there you
OBS
go.
fails. Hey! Hey, we live
Anyway,
in interesting times, but don't.
anyway, so, I meant to follow the pattern that you're doing. I know I've been telling you that I wanted to pick up on my Ansible and Terraform learning. For those who don't know what that does, it's infrastructure as code. Look that up. It's pretty cool. But the point is, if you've been doing network configuration and network engineering as long as we have, you'll realize at some point there has to be a better way, and this is the better way, at least this point in time.
Yeah.
Being able to automate a shit ton of stuff. And the reason why Vlad went as far as going Ansible and Terraform is because I'm going to tell them, Vlad, what happened. For whatever crazy reason, your VM just decided to take a day off and just fucked on off. I don't know what happened there, but you were this close to nuking it and rebuilding the whole thing.
No, I nuked it and rebuilt it 3 or 4 times. So the first time it was basically I'd reboot and it'd go into a login auth loop on the Ubuntu service. And basically what was happening was when I installed K3s, which is a lighter version of K8s, it was doing something where it was messing up what's called the PAM module in Ubuntu, basically the authentication module into the
Yeah.
service. Um, and and this goes back to where AI did me wrong a couple of times. So that was one of them where I'm like, yeah, I don't think it was me trying to do the stuff in Splunk that broke this. I reckon it was something else. And then after I did some research, I found that there was a known issue in GitHub for K3s, which actually broke certain things. And then the AI went, oh, wow, you're right, Vlad. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, so you didn't go on the internet and search that yourself for me, despite me prompting you to do so. Cool, cool, no worries. Then the second part where it did me wrong were a couple of different parts, right? So when I was applying network policies between my containers, we were talking about one specific container for a little while, the Duo Auth app, because we were adding some updates to it. And I'm like, okay, let's lock it down. So Cloudflare Tunnel goes to Nginx load balancer, goes to the web apps, but they can't talk to each other or skip around past them, right? So we did that. Then it broke access to 2 of my websites out of the 3 because it forgot that they were all there. So it knew it had context. It remembered. And I said, oh, these 2 other websites are broken. I think we forgot to apply that in the network policy that you gave me earlier. And he goes,
Mhm.
you're right. You're right, Vlad. We forgot. Let's update the XML and reapply it to your Kubernetes cluster. Boom, 2 seconds later, it was up again. I'm like, okay. So this is where AI legitimately is not perfect because it thinks too much like a human. Despite having all of the context, it still isn't quite all there.
Here's an idea. I came across this, I think, in LinkedIn, where if you tell your AI as part of your prompt that somebody's gonna check his work or its work, that it's actually gonna produce a better prompt or a better result. Something to try out.
Yes. No, yeah,
'Cause
you
it's
can feed the AI certain prompts to make it sure that it does certain things. Actually, so there's a video from a guy, and I'll send it to you later on. And for all of our YouTube listeners, I'll drop it in the description later when I upload this too. But there's a guy, um, the Primogen, his name is, or Primogen, he calls himself, and he did a video on the fact that GPT had goblins in its system. It turns out
Oh, I've seen
has a
that.
nerdy voice, and people were using nerdy because they equated nerdy as like smarter for say coding and all this sort of stuff.
Right.
And he walks through the entire thing, but it's hilarious because it would just randomly spill out goblins everywhere apparently, and with every subsequent GPT model, there were more goblins in the system, and they ChatGPT even actually wrote up an article on it on their main website, I think. So
I remember.
that's it was a hilarious little thing. Um, Hang on, let me bring this up again as well, just real quick while we're still here. Um, Boom, up on the stage. Here we go. This is the official OpenAI website where the goblins came from. It starting with GPT 5.1, our models began developing a strange habit. They increasingly mentioned goblins, gremlins, and other creatures in their metaphors.
Fun. So,
Godspeed
I
indeed,
reckon
tiny confident goblin slain.
they should keep this instance running and train it in, like, train it in Dungeons& and Dragons.
Yes.
I think that
How
would be
has
so
someone
freaking
not
awesome.
How has someone not made like a system where an AI comes in, acts as your dungeon master, and takes you through the Dungeons and Dragons adventures? Yeah, that would be freaking
That
wild.
was a freaking yeah.
I would pay money to host that locally, maybe. But yeah, you can see. So like goblins increased in GPT 5.4, especially for the nerdy personality. So quirky, cynical, friendly. Um, Pretty cool, right? So
That is fun.
yeah, the world of AI, right? I'm glad there's no goblins in what was I using? Claude Sonnet. So
You never know. Anyway, so going back to what I was supposed to be working on, mine's a little so, okay,
yes,
I had this bigger image in my head of what I want my lab to look like. But again, I wanted to be the one to practice what I preach. So I have decided to introduce a segmentation strategy in my network. And I decided to start with the DNS layer, which
cool.
we have been given some uh internal use only licenses for Umbrella and Secure Connect and, CSA in the future. So I go, yeah, what the heck? I just might as well make use of that, which I did. And I'm not, mate, I am not a security SE, not yet at least. There's still a future for that. I'm still keeping my ears on the ground. But my whole point is there is a way for me to make use of any of the default stuff that's running off of Umbrella. And thanks for putting me on the stage. I am going to show that right now. Umbrella.cisco.com. And so let me log in first.
Oops,
I'm not gonna show
one
anything.
sec, mate. Your audio is
It's okay. I can we could just cut that whole part out. Still going? No? Nothing? Still good?
okay. And after some technical difficulties, we are back again. Fred, take it away, my friend.
So as I was saying, I had a plan in mind to practice what I preach and actually introduce some sort of segmentation strategy within my own home network, which is fairly straightforward. I have all the users, aka my stakeholders at home, plopped into a single user VLAN that's easy to segment. They don't need to their devices don't need to be communicating with each other. So there's a feature in Meraki Wi-Fi that does LAN isolation. That's easy enough. I've given myself a bit of a hard time though in saying that because um, I decided, the geek that I am, to
Mm,
put my IoT stuff in a different VLAN.
yeah.
That means any Google Home Hub, Chromecast, and everything else is on a different VLAN. Now, I have to think of a way to introduce segmentation without disrupting any attempts to connect to that IoT VLAN. Because sometimes when my daughter listens to Spotify in her room, she has that Google speaker in her room that sits in a different VLAN. So that's a challenge for me to make sure that I don't introduce any unwanted disruptions. So think of
Got
it as
it.
a good bad thing. It's more of my own doing.
Yep. Reminds
Anyway,
me of the days when people needed bonjour, started needing Bonjour to do
correct, right?
screen sharing to Mac Minis, right? Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the image that I had in my head. Let me stop sharing here because this prop up to that conversation. So I wanted to introduce segmentation and eventually be able to um, go crazy with my lab setup. As you can see here, that's sitting behind me, my actual
Very
lab
nice.
kit. It's nowhere near as impressive as some of the ones that we've seen before, Vlad. You know that, but it's a start. I got to start somewhere. Now, I want to be able to go crazy and introduce as I remember putting it in one of those WebEx spaces that we're speaking at. My intention is to break stuff as much as I can, or just tinker around with stuff as much as I can and see how I can break them.
100%.
And I won't be able to do that knowing that I haven't secured my network enough because I
Yep.
don't want that blowback affecting everything else.
Also fair
So that's
enough.
so that's exactly what I've been doing. So with that in mind, I have started with first me realizing that I have this small form factor refurbished that I bought off of somewhere
Yep.
that's running my home lab services. I've installed Proxmox on that one, and it came to a point where I have to remember each and every IP address that I've assigned to it, and I have to come back to the Meraki dashboard to see which machine I've assigned the IP address. I know
Oh,
that there's some machine somewhere that is doing this, but I don't always remember the IP that I've used. So guess what? I decided to deploy a DNS server at my home lab,
uh-huh.
and that's what
Ah,
I've been doing. Now,
very cool.
it's not as hard as it sounds, but there's a lot of underlying concepts that you have to know and understand before you can actually get it to work.
Yep.
And as I mentioned earlier, we are given as SEs, we somehow found our way to get an SE internal only copy of Umbrella instances, not a copy, a license for internal use for us to actually know what we're talking about. And that's exactly what I did. So we know for a fact integrations in Meraki and Umbrella fairly straightforward, just API keys. Now I go, what if since I wanted a DNS server in my home, what are the options that I do have? Because some of the more popular DNS services involve some kind of money. And again, this is what we were talking about. We try to get away as much as we can with free stuff. So I thought, hey, I'd go open source. But before I narrowed it down to open source, I was thinking, is Umbrella Virtual Appliance actually capable of doing that DNS functions? Long story short, it doesn't, but you
No.
still need some kind of DNS service,
Yep.
but it can act as your DNS name
As a
server
proxy.
as a
Yep.
proxy, and any home local or lab domain that I've assigned will get redirected to that local DNS server that I have sitting somewhere in an LXC container. So Proxmox containers, I realized containers, the industry term is containers. Docker is actually just one of those branded names that
Yep.
we always mistake for as the industry standard. But long story short, Proxmox's version of containers is called LXC, a Linux container.
Yep.
So I'm running a DNS server using a very minimal footprint of an LXC container. And this is where I start sharing my screen.
Here we
There we
go.
go. So this is my Proxmox environment. I've kind of broke them. I've updated the view to just show all LXC containers and virtual machines. So this
That's
one,
cool.
an Ubuntu container running 2404, you can see the IP that I've assigned. And this is the instance for DNS. You can see the resources are very minimal. It's 1 gig memory, 1 gig swap. I could actually tune it down to 512 if I wanted to, because DNS is really very minimal.
Oh yeah, I can
Um,
imagine.
and it's just one core. So it's very minimal. And the funny thing is, again, I took a page out of your book. Ask Circuit to help me to put this together. I wanted Umbrella Virtual Appliance sitting on top as my resolver because it's supposed to do it that way. So if you look at Umbrella VA,
So that's where Umbrella is going to do the cloud policy checks for
correct,
any internet-based traffic, and then anything local, it's going to punt it to your local container DNS, basically.
correct. So the here we go, virtual appliance. This is the visual representation of how it's supposed to go, if I get it to work. So
Yep.
local DNS server sitting here, Umbrella Virtual Appliance sitting in another VM, which is this VM right here,
Yep.
which is, long story short, Umbrella VA, you have to download it off of your existing Umbrella uh, deployment. It
Mhm.
will create this customized Linux machine that you had to import into your hypervisor of choice, KVM being one of the options, ESXi is the others, and there's a like an AWS or Azure version of it that if you want to deploy it in the cloud.
Yep.
So I downloaded the KVM. It has everything you need in there, including the default login. It took me a couple of tries before I got it to work, but basically, you just have to import that machine into this Proxmox hypervisor, and it will run itself as a self-contained Linux container or a Linux image.
Yep.
And once it is able to find itself in your Umbrella instance, as you can see here, I have one active virtual appliance running,
Nice.
and it was able to pick this up. So VA220 is the name that I've assigned. You can see that VA220 is what it's showing here.
Yep.
So basically, this is exactly how I've built this part,
That's wild.
right? And as you can see, the IP that I've assigned is this 220. You can see that my DNS is actually, let's look up, if we do an NS lookup of, say, cisco.com, you can see that my resolver is actually 69220.
So you've updated your Meraki network and the DHCP services to point to
Just for
automatically
this
push out
particular
that
VLAN.
DNS service. Yeah.
So again, being the tech geek that we are, all of my users sit in one VLAN, all of my IoT stuff in one VLAN. Guess where I'm sitting? I have my own VLAN. I call it my IT ops VLAN.
Everyone's got one.
So my IT ops VLAN, the DHCP assignment, I've assigned this DNS server, the virtual appliance, as my kind of my DNS server for this VLAN.
Yep.
Basically, it does what it's supposed to do. As my local resolver, it forwards any local lab domains that I might have assigned
Yep.
into a local DNS server, and any DNS requests that have not been cached in the virtual appliance gets sent to Umbrella. But this virtual appliance is aware of, I could be wrong here, but from what I've been reading, this virtual appliance is aware of whatever policies you've defined in your umbrella instance.
Yep.
So I've been mucking around with it, the deployment and the policies that you can see, DNS policies. Aside from changing a few things for home IoT use, I pretty much just defined the default policies, right? So
Basic
the more common
security and
ones, security settings with, command and control, safe home DNS. So the more usual stuff. Me being cheeky, I tried, because you know how in Australia the government has banned
social
social
media.
media use for under 16, and I have a 13-year-old who uses TikTok, and I've been trying to find ways to ban TikTok from the house. And she told me, I'm just going to find a way around it, right? I go, at least I tried. So that's kind of what drove me to see if I can block TikTok from my home
Yep.
network. But basically, that's it. It's very basic stuff. It's default policy, it's all there. And what I realized is that I used to run a different umbrella instance for DNS policies, and then there was a time Secure Connect came about, and uh, one of our friends helped me spin up another umbrella instance
Mm.
for Secure Connect use cases. And then that other instance left untouched for a while. And I go, why can't I just use this same umbrella instance, same, because the DNS capabilities are there in a higher tier license anyway. So I might as well just leverage the DNS stuff for now, make use of it for SASE stuff later on. At least I'm just looking at the same org instance of Umbrella, and I don't have to keep flipping back and forth. So that was
Yep.
the idea behind it. And then here it goes. So I've managed to successfully deploy my virtual appliance and my DNS server, which is
That's right.
I've used Technicium, is a recommendation by our friend Claude Opus. And one of the things that caught me unaware, and you can see where I've really not learned my lesson because I haven't read up on
Ah,
it before going, is
zones.
actually defining the zones. So
Yep.
this is the local lab domain that I have defined for my network. And this is where you add the A records for each of those devices. So you can see I've been trying stuff out. I don't know if I'm supposed to do this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but anyone who knows stuff about this, hit me up. I'd like to learn from you. But basically, what I've done is my home assistant running at this IP, my Proxmox instance running at this IP. I have an RPi that's sitting under my desk at this IP in the VA. I've gone as far as that one. So
Yep.
it used to be that I have to type the IP address of my Proxmox, and now
Oh,
I'm actually using the FQDN, the URL.
that's wild. That's wild. I kind of want to do that now on my home network as well. That is wild.
And this is kind of goes back to, we were talking about, I told you, I once I come back to my Terraform and Ansible learning, because it's like item 3 on my list, I just found out that there is a Terraform provider for Proxmox. At least I think on an LXC level. So I think there's a way that we can, if for whatever reason what happened to you happens to me and I had to rebuild everything, it would be handy if we had like a Terraform script to just spin that whole shit out instead of having to go through the whole motion again.
That's it. That's it. Amazing.
So yeah, I've been learning quite some interesting. See, my home assistant, I've assigned this URL, this fully qualified domain name, and I've been using it ever since. And I've learned quite a bit about dig functions as well. Please don't judge me. This was not taught in CCNA school, but I can actually learn quite a lot with using the dig function, and this is really cool. 10, 10.0. I'll read my Umbrella VA and let's go cisco.com. So I've learned to look at the answers and the questions and the queries because NS lookup was what we've been taught for a long time, right? But
Correct.
dig apparently is quite a bit more powerful. And
Yes.
now
Yep.
we've learned that as network engineers, we should be using dig because it's cool. But basically, I've learned that, like there are some situations, for example, if I query my home lab, like my Proxmox instance, here, I'll do the correct expected answer by typing in the whole domain and I get an answer. Query time 2 milliseconds. The answer section gives me the right IP address. Status no error. If I, for whatever reason, just use this one, it just gives me status NX domain, which I've learned actually is a standard DNS response that says non-existent domain.
Yep.
And it just gives me the stuff. So interesting learnings over the past week just doing these two things. So,
Very cool.
like you said, you've done quite a bit over the past 2 weeks that you've been mucking around in your lab. This is as far as I go. So if that took you forever, this is going to take me forever and a day.
This is cool, mate. I definitely want to set up a DNS service at home at some point now. That is so much better
It's
than
very
looking up
lightweight.
IPs.
Yeah. Because I almost came to a point when I was thinking, should I assign a DHCP server as well? And I go, yeah, MX is doing quite a good job at it, and I'll just you know, I'll just live with it for now because I'm not
Yep.
deploying a very big network anyway.
You're gonna have to set up DHCP forwarding and all of that. Yeah,
Correct.
that's
So
fair.
that's a pain and a half that I'm not willing to go through.
Fair point. It's not an enterprise network at home, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. Well, that on that note, what have we talked about today? We've gone through my lab instance and the power and the shortcomings of AI. We've gone through where AI is heading and going, and we've gone through DNS services as well. This was a super duper random, super duper long packet party episode. If you actually made it all the way to the end, thank you so much. Let us know that you actually made it all the way to the end. If you actually enjoyed what was a very, very casual chat walking through different technologies and just general chit chat, I mean, let us know about that too, because we can definitely do more of this content. Fred and I are great at talking shit, so it's no problems
And
for us at all.
as of recording time, we haven't decided yet to whether release it as one single episode or chop it up into a couple episodes. I guess we'll find out.
Do we milk the
But if you've managed,
algorithm with a couple of episodes, or do we just smash it out in one? Like that's the,
I don't know, right? But if you've managed to stay with us for this long, thank you very much. I'd like to buy you a coffee wherever you might be.
On that note, have a wonderful morning, day, evening, depending on what time and day you are watching and listening to this. And thanks again, always, for sticking with us.
Thank you. And we will be, stay tuned. Watch out for more episodes coming. See you later.